Good morning.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Gary's Book Club. I'm Brian Markwalter, Senior Vice President of Research and Standards at the Consumer Technology Association. I'm happy to be here. I'm even happier to be interviewing Scott Stawski. He's an executive with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And Scott, do you want to say a little bit about yourself before we get going here?
Well, thanks, Brian. First of all, it's just great to be here, and I hope everyone's having a great time at the CES. Phenomenal technology here. So yes, I'm an executive at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I wrote Inflection Point, and look forward to talking with you.
All right, so here's the book. It's a great book. It's going to cover a number of subjects, and we're going to go over that pretty quickly today, but I found it to be a fantastic read for anybody in our business, anybody who's running a business, I think small to large. And maybe we should start with the title of the book, which I think has a lineage back to some of Andy Grove's work. So can you tell us how you arrived at that title, which probably is not the typical enterprise computing kind of title, I'm guessing, but yeah, go ahead.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm sure we all have a lot of respect for Andy Grove, the former chairman and CEO of Intel. And what Andy was great at was recognizing the difference between just an ordinary trend that we all deal with in business every single day and what he termed an inflection point. He's the person that originally coined the term inflection point. And an inflection point is more than a trend. It is a convergence of trends that fundamentally alter and disrupt the business environment. And in my opinion, today, we are in the midst of a major inflection point. There are industries out there that are being disrupted, that are fundamentally changing. And that's really the reason why I chose it, was an homage to Andy for his original vision of recognizing the difference between trend and inflection point.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think if you just start with cloud and the other subjects, everybody will think, well, of course, I've been hearing about that for 5 years now, but your point is that there's something truly transformational going on here, and that is hard for companies to spot. So there is, pretty quickly in the book, you make what I think is a very provocative, almost shocking statement if you're in the IT business or you run IT for a company. I want to get this right. Essentially, you argue that companies should never buy hardware or software licenses, software again. And so if you take that at face value, it's like, wow, so what do we do? That's all we've done for 30 years. That's all we know how to do. So why do you make that statement? Why is it so important to the premise of your book?
Sure, absolutely, and I have gotten a lot of comments. A lot of my friends that are CIOs and being an executive at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise to make a statement that I stand by, and that statement is, companies today, with the convergence of technology, should never ever spend capital expense on hardware and software, period. The companies that spend money and lock themselves into a capital expense by spending money on hardware and software, what they're doing is they're locking themselves in to a very inflexible business environment. And with today's technology, cloud, software as a service, apps and data, there's no need to have capital expense to buy the hardware and buy the software. Everything should be on a pay-per-usage consumption basis. And that's really what the convergence of technology allows, in particular apps and cloud, is to have all of your technology enablers as a business on a consumption utility basis, pay per uses, versus a capital expense basis. And so I really do stand by that statement.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so the difference we need to understand is whether you treat it as a capital expense, how you handle it. That we will not have hardware and software in the office. It'll just be delivered a different way.
Exactly, and the clear example is the data center, okay? Does it make sense to buy thousands and thousands of servers and build a brick and mortar data center versus putting your applications in the cloud in one of the major cloud service providers? I would argue that the days of building data centers, except for a very, very few select companies, are over.
Okay, so that is like a division of labor kind of let companies who specialize in that provide that service like a utility to everybody else who really doesn't need a data center. They need the services provided by it. Right?
Exactly, Brian, and you use the term, specialty, okay? And that's really what the book is about, is that the convergence of today's technology allows a company to get back to their specialty, okay, their core competency, and to let other companies handle the technology enabler business processes that empower the core competency without having a company have to invest the management bandwidth and the capital expense on that technology themselves.
Yeah, and that's another great point. So you do talk a lot about, in the front of the book, you set up some of the arguments. You talk about focus, core competency. So it's in some ways, even though this is about enterprise IT, if you will, in some senses, there's some great business lessons here around how our industry, in particular, the technology industry, operates. And it's a fast-moving industry, and maybe that's part of the importance of this, is that we do move quickly and we have to be agile. And speaking of moving quickly and being busy, how'd you find the time? What motivated you to write a book? That's not easy for people to do.
Well, finding the time is the most difficult challenge. Like a lot of us, I'm sure folks in the audience, we do a lot of traveling. And so I had made a decision about a year and a half ago that I was going to devote X amount of time when I'm traveling, all of my airline flights, to writing the book. X amount of times in a hotel room writing the book. So it's really kind of maximizing your own bandwidth that you're already expending. The reason I wrote the book is, I even today, and this, by the way, has riled some of my CIO friends, I wrote the book because even today I go into a CIO's office, and a lot of the CIOs and even CFOs and CEOs look at the technology enablers as a cost savings vehicle. Okay, I want to move my applications to the cloud because I want to lower my IT expense. And in my opinion, and what the book is about, is that's not the core benefit of the convergence of today's technology. The core benefit is it allows a company to refocus themselves on their core strategies, their core competency, and establish an environment, which I call a continual transformation environment operating model, a technology utility environment. You flip the switch and the technology is on to support the business processes, allowing management to focus on their core competency.
Okay, and I think you mentioned that there's discussion of operating. So can you draw the distinction, because this isn't just a book about technology and that we can acquire technology. I think you make an argument that companies need to operate differently in this environment. Can you spend a little bit more time on that?
Sure. The reason why we called the book Inflection Point is because we have major disruption that's occurring here. Disintermediation, where entire swaths of the value structure in certain sectors are just being eliminated. The Internet of Things is causing a major disruption. And so if companies are going to thrive, and in some cases even survive, they need to be fast, they need to be agile, and they need to be flexible. And the key is an operating model that's driven by technology that is fast, agile, and being able to enter and exit a geography in the matter of months, not years, okay? Changing and going direct to consumer instead of through retail in a matter of days and not quarters or years. That's the type of flexibility we need, and it's the convergence of the technology that can allow a company that flexible operating model.
Okay, and another part of your discussion is this continual transformation environment, which again it's not directed at the CIO. That sounds like it's got to become part of the DNA of the company, right? So what do you mean by continual transformation environment?
Yeah, absolutely right. It needs to become part of the DNA, the overall culture of a company. A company needs to recognize that to achieve competitive advantage, they need to be constantly looking at their marketplace and making changes to the way they go to market, and being able to react in a way, on a dime. They need to be able to, again, exit markets, change whether they're going direct to consumer. And in order to do that, they need to be able to focus on their core competency and have the enablers be able to support that are in the background. Okay, and that's not what is occurring now. So without getting too long-winded, let's use the data center an example. If I'm relying on my data center that I own and the servers that I own and the applications that I purchase and the annual maintenance fees that I bought to power, okay, my business, then if I want to enter a new geography, more than likely, I may have to build a new data center. I have to purchase new servers. I have to go out and purchase new applications and new maintenance agreements. If I have all of that in a global cloud, I can go into a new country in a matter of minutes. That's an example of the agility and the flexibility we need, and that's the advantage of the technology. It's not a cost savings, it's a flexibility and agility advantage.
Okay. You do build upon 4 technologies that you talk about. They're cloud, mobility, apps, and data. Why those 4? They're considered and sort of put to the side. I mean, I think that comes to the forefront of everybody's mind, but how'd you pick those 4? Why are they important?
Well, there's definitely an interrelationship in the 4, and it's not to say that there's not other technologies out there that are extremely vital, okay, for a continual transformation environment operating model. For example, security technology. Yeah. But the key is that you need a geographic independent delivery model for technology, and that's the cloud. The cloud allows you to go into any market environment without capital expense structure. So that's the cloud. Now the interrelationship of cloud and apps is you need apps to sit in the cloud, and you need it on a consumption basis. You do not want to have to spend $5, $6, $10 million on a application package when you're testing out a new market. So software as a service, or what we commonly refer to as apps in the consumer world, is critical flexibility without that huge cost structure. And then when you data and mobility, data is the key, and the interoperability and the access of data with your apps through the cloud that ultimately power your decision making. And then lastly is mobile, and it's both for consumers and workforce. We live in a mobile environment, so everything that you do, the technology enablers that are software as a service, sitting on the cloud, bringing back data, have to be mobile. So that was the foundation of the technology, Convergence.
All right. So in Chapter 9, towards the end of the book, you kind of bring it home. You talk about the IT department of the future. So what does that look like? You again make some maybe provocative statements about CIOs and how they should be positioned. So what's the takeaway for the department of the future?
And this I believe is key because it really forces a company to move to a continual transformation environment operating model. Is the IT department of the future is going to look vastly different. Fundamentally, it's going to become a service broker of technology enablers provided by outside firms. So instead of owning data centers and managing data centers, the service broker IT department manage cloud providers. Instead of owning applications and managing applications, they are going to manage an ecosystem of partners that are providing those applications in a software as a service consumption-based model. So very much the IT department of the future is going to shrink, and it's going to be a service broker, and instead of building and running, they're very much going to be more involved in governance. Okay, so that is the fundamental difference, and a difference that we need to start teaching our students all the way down into college, because the workforce is going to be shifting to those technology enabler providers and away from the company IT data center.
Okay, so does this idea scale, like CTA, we're 150 people, we have an IT department. It's easy to envision a very big company doing this. Does it scale down? Is this are these points, should they be adopted by all size companies?
It definitely should. Except for the very largest companies in the world, and except for some of the largest technology enablers of the world, such as the Amazons, the Hewlett Packard Enterprise, of course they're going to have large IT departments because they are the ecosystem of providers. But a company like Uber, which is a classic example, Uber could not have become the largest livery company in the world, taxi company, without owning a single taxi cab, without, accessing this convergence of technology and having a continual transformation environment operating model. They can come into markets. They recently came into Las Vegas. They can come into markets without having to scale out in capital expense their IT infrastructure. And then the new startup, you can become a global company as a startup overnight, where it used to cost you tens of twenties and hundreds of millions of dollars. So whether it's a small company or a big company, the continual transformation environment operating model applies.
All right, so we're going to bring this home. One more quick question. The book's gotten some great reviews. It is a fantastic read, even if IT is not your business, because there's a lot of operating practice in here. But you do poke at CIOs a little bit. Was that your intention, and where do you want to go from here? What are you trying to motivate?
Well, I do. I do poke at CIOs a little bit, and I refer quickly to CIOs that there are three camps of CIOs. There's the traditionalist CIO that says, you know what, we're different. We need to own our own hardware. We need to own our own software. That gives us an advantage. You have the incrementalist CIO that says, hey, I know this new convergence of technology is out there. I'm going to move a little bit of my stuff into the cloud, maybe email, but I'm still going to have at the core a pretty large owned IT infrastructure. And then you have the transformative CEO that says, you know what, in 24 months, I'm going to close down all my data centers and I'm going to move 90% of my application workload into the cloud. It's the transformative CEO that is going to make a major impact and is going to help his company survive in this time of disruption. So I've gotten a lot of comments about those three categories.
All right, fantastic. So join me in thanking Scott, and Scott is going to be signing books right over here, and I look forward to your next publication.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.